Hello everyone. Well, in this video, I'm going to discuss how you can execute the Selenium script with the help of test container. Before we start with that discussion, let us understand about two terminologies which I'm going to use in this session. The first one is the Docker container and the second one is the Docker image. Docker container are the lightweight virtual machine on which you can deploy your application and access it. Docker container needs Docker image to deploy the application. Docker image are the lightweight standalone executable package of the application with all the necessary dependency. So you can think of Docker container as a lightweight virtual machine with a small operating system on which you can deploy your application with the help of Docker image and access in the host machine. So let me give you an example of it. So on my system, I have a Bugzilla Docker image. So this is the Docker image of the Bugzilla application, which contain the executable package of the Bugzilla application, along with the necessary dependency which is needed by the Bugzilla application. I can use this image to create a Docker container that is going to deploy the Bugzilla application, and then from the host machine, I can access that application. So in the terminal, I'm executing certain command which start with keyword that is Docker. I'm able to execute this command because I have Docker application installed on my system. So using this command, I have created the container using the Bugzilla image. -d represent that the container will run as a daemon process. -p represent that I have exposed certain port of the Docker container and bind it to the local port of the host machine. So in this case, the Docker container has a port number 80, which I have bind it to the local port 9091. And that's how I can access the application running on this Docker container. So in order to access this application, I can just use my web browser. So you can see here, localhost 9091 is the port, and this is our Bugzilla application. So let me stop this container. So as there is no container, if I try to access the application now, I will not be able to access it. So let me show you what we have did so far. So this is our host machine. In the host machine, we created a Docker container for Bugzilla application. And in this container, there is a port number 80, which is exposed. So we have bind that port to the local port 9091. So when the host machine send the request at port number 9091, it get redirected to the port number 80 of the Bugzilla Docker container. So in the similar manner, Selenium also releases the Docker images for the Selenium server along with the different browser combination. So this is the Git repository of the Selenium HQ, and we can see here we have Docker container for the Firefox browser along with the Selenium standalone server with Chrome and with Microsoft Edge. So we can use these images to create the container and run our test inside that container. So how do you get these images? There is a Docker Hub website, which is an online repository for all the published image. You can come here and search for the Selenium images. So these are the Selenium images which are published. So this is the image name. And if you go to the tags, you will find the version also. So at this point, the test container concept comes into the picture. So far, whatever the steps we have done, all those steps are manual. Using the test container framework, you can automate all those steps. That means you can download the specific image, you can start the container, you can run the test against that container, and you can also remove that container, everything from your test script. So let me show you how it is done. The first thing what we need to do is to add the dependency of the test container framework in our project. Again, you can go to the Maven repository and look for test container dependencies. So this is the test container dependencies, and I'm going to add this to the pom.xml of our project. And in the similar manner, we need to search for the Selenium test container and add this dependency in the pom.xml of our project. So let me go ahead and create a base test class. So inside this class, I'm going to write the code that will take care of downloading the image if it is not present on the system, as well as starting the container using that image. So these are the steps which I'm going to follow. First, I'm going to create a method which is annotated with before suite. And inside this method, I'm going to add the code which is going to start the test container, and the test container is going to start our Selenium container. Then I'm going to create one more method. The annotation with that method will be after suite. And in this method, I will add a code which is going to shut down the container. This class, that is the base test, will be the parent class of all our test classes. And the reason behind of using the before suite and after suite method is because I want my container to start first before I start my test case execution. And after all the execution of tests are done, then the container should get terminated. That's why after suite method. So let me create certain static variable. And the reason I'm creating the static variable because both of the method, that is before suite and after suite, are static methods. So private static another variable for image version. Now let us look at the API documentation of test container framework. So this is the class which we need to use in order to bring up the test container. And this test container is going to bring up the Selenium container. So let me create a protected variable of type browser WebDriver container. And let me call it as Chrome. After this, I'm going to create the static method, which will have the annotation before suite. Inside this, I'm going to initialize our test container. So Chrome equal to new browser WebDriver container. And let me open the implementation of this class. Inside this class, we have multiple constructor for creating the instance of browser WebDriver container. The constructor which I'm going to use is this one, which takes the parameter of type Docker image name. And inside this class, we have some utility method which will help us in parsing the image name as well as image version. So I will use Docker image name dot parse image name and also specify the version. So with tag image tag. and the return type of this method is Docker image name. So this statement is telling us that what is the image name and what is the version test container should use for creating the Selenium Docker container. And then I will pass this variable in the constructor of browser WebDriver container. Along with this, we need to specify that which browser we need to use. So for that, we have another method that is with capabilities. And here I will pass the instance of Chrome option. So at this point, I'm just passing a simple object of the Chrome option, but you can create a new instance of the Chrome option with the customization and then pass that object in this method. And after that, I'm going to call the method that is start, which will start our test container. And then the test container will start the Selenium container. After this, I'm going to create the method for after suite. And inside this method, first I will check whether the container is running or not. If it is running, then shut down the container and release all the allocated resource to that container. So if Chrome dot is running, then call the close method, which will release all the resource and then shut down the container. After this, I'm going to add our test class. This class will inherit from base test. So inside this class, for time being, I'm going to add a dummy method first. And then I will run this code in a debug mode. So let me put a debug point inside the before suite method and run this in a debug mode. Now let me go back to the terminal and see that whether the test container has been started or not. So Docker images. So as you can see here on my system, the test container framework first pulled the Selenium Chrome debug image, and after that, using this image, it started the container also. So as you can see here, we have three containers running. One is for the Bugzilla, this is the test container, and this is the Selenium container. So at this moment on our system, we have Selenium container, which is being controlled by the test container. And this test container is being controlled by our Selenium script. So let me go ahead and continue with the execution. Now let me go back to the terminal and again look for the containers. So our Selenium container is deleted. And similarly, the test container is also gone. So the next thing what we are going to do is write the Selenium script, which is going to be run inside the Selenium container, and it is going to access the Bugzilla, which is running in the Bugzilla container. So based on this command, we know that the host port, that is 9091, is bind to the port number 80 on the Bugzilla Docker container. So in order to access the Bugzilla in another container, we need to tell the test container that this port is available on the host machine. For that, I'm going to make a call to another API. So in our before suite method, I will make a call to the API that is TestContainers dot expose host ports, and the port number is 9091. Using this API call, the test container will tell the Selenium container that port number 9091 is available on the host machine. So now the Selenium Docker container will be aware of that there is a port number 9091 which is available on the host machine, and Selenium container can access that port. So in my test class, I'm going to create a private method that will create the URL for the Bugzilla application. So private string get URL. The parameter to this method are host and port. String host and port. Return string dot format. This is the URL. So host and port. I'm going to call this method inside our test method. String app URL equal to get URL, and the port number is 9091. Now when you start interacting with the test container, in order to establish the connection between the container to container, we need to specify host. So basically using this, we are telling that send the request to the host port number 9091, which will redirect the request to the port number 80 of the Bugzilla container. So now we have the application URL. The second thing what we need to have is the driver instance. Now in case of idle scenario, when everything was running on your host machine, that is your Selenium server, your browser, your Selenium script, then you can use the standard Selenium API to get the instance of WebDriver. But in this case, the Selenium server is running on the remote machine, which is our Selenium Docker container. So here we need to use the remote WebDriver API to interact with the Selenium instance. So in order to get the remote WebDriver instance, we can use our container instance to get the WebDriver. So chrome.get WebDriver. And the return type of this method is of type remote WebDriver. So WebDriver driver. Now I can use this driver instance to run the Selenium script on the Selenium container. So let me provide the initial configuration. So after opening the Bugzilla URL in the browser, I will use the Bugzilla web element to log in and log out from the Bugzilla application. So these are the locator which I'm going to use. After login, I'm going to take the screenshot of the web page. So let me create one more private method. The parameter to this method is of type WebDriver. First, I need to typecast the WebDriver to type, that is take screenshot. And then I'm going to call the method that is get screenshot, output type as file. And then save the screenshot on the local file system. And then call this method inside our test method. Then I will wait for 2 seconds. And after this, log out from the Bugzilla application. And before I do a logout, let me print the title of the page also. Along with the title, let me print the URL of the current web page also. Okay, so once this is done, let me put a breakpoint at line number 26. Let me also check whether our Bugzilla container is up and running. So container is up and running. And then I'm going to run this script in a debug mode. So first we will start the container. So let me go ahead at the terminal and check for the containers. So we have our test container as well as Selenium Docker container running. So let me continue with the execution. So this is the title. And you can see this is our URL. And then continue with the execution. So our test is passed. Let me go to the directory. And this is our screenshot. Also, let me go back to the terminal and look for the container. So the container is gone. So as you can see here, with the help of test container framework, how easy it is for running the Selenium script. You don't need to worry about setting up everything on the environment. That is, what is the driver version, what is the browser available. You can just pull the required image, create the Docker container, and with the help of test container framework, you can execute your test.